It began not with a bang, but with a whisper, a quiet revolution in Canadian kitchens and grocery aisles. The change was subtle at first, almost imperceptible, as if the country was collectively holding its breath, waiting to see if anyone else would notice. But beneath the surface a powerful shift was underway, one that would soon ripple through every corner of Canadian life. In early 2025, the Great Canadian Pantry Purge took root, not as a protest in the streets, but as a movement in shopping carts and grocery lists. It was a revolution waged in the everyday choices of ordinary people, in the quiet moments of decision at the grocery store, and in the simple act of reaching for one product over another. Canadians, stung by political tensions and a sense of disrespect from their southern neighbor, started turning away from American food products. The decision was not just about food, it was about pride, identity, and a desire to stand together in the face of adversity. Social media became the organizing ground, with hashtags like #BuyCanadian fueling a digital wildfire. Online communities sprang up overnight, connecting strangers from coast to coast, all united by a common goal, to support Canadian producers and send a message that could not be ignored. Shoppers shared tips, posted all Canadian grocery hauls, and encouraged others to join. Friends and families swapped stories of their favorite local brands, and recipes were reinvented to feature homegrown ingredients. Local farmers and small business owners felt the impact almost immediately. Markets buzzed with new energy, and shelves once overlooked were suddenly in high demand. The movement breathed new life into communities, strengthening bonds between neighbors and local producers. What began as a trickle soon became a powerful current of consumer activism. The momentum grew with every shared post, every conversation, and every purchase made in support of Canadian goods. Choosing a Canadian apple over an American one became a political statement, a demonstration of collective will. Each small act was a vote for sovereignty, a way to reclaim control over what ended up on Canadian tables. Families cleared their shelves of American brands, vowing to buy local. Children learned to recognize the maple leaf on packaging, and parents explained the importance of supporting their own. The pantry purge was both literal and symbolic, a metaphor for asserting economic and cultural independence. It was a way for Canadians to reclaim their narrative, to say, we decide what we value and who we support. It proved that economic power resides with the consumer, sending shockwaves through one of the world's most integrated supply chains. The world watched as Canada flexed its collective muscle, showing that unity could reshape markets and rewrite the rules. The Great Canadian Pantry Purge was Canada drawing a line in the sand, one shopping cart at a time, a quiet revolution that spoke volumes, echoing in every home, every meal, and every choice to buy Canadian. Every movement has its catalyst. Sometimes it's a single event, other times it's a series of provocations that build until a nation can no longer stay silent. For Canada, the spark came in early 2025, when a newly returned Trump administration unleashed a wave of aggressive trade measures, sending shockwaves across the border and into the heart of Canadian society. Heavy tariffs on Canadian goods jolted the economy, threatening jobs, businesses, and the livelihoods of countless families who depended on cross-border trade. But it wasn't just the economic pain that stung. The rhetoric from Washington, suggesting Canada should become the 51st state, was a slap in the face, igniting outrage and disbelief from coast to coast. Canadians saw this as a profound insult, a blatant disregard for their history, culture, and hard-won sovereignty. It was more than a policy dispute, it was a challenge to their very identity. The idea of being absorbed by the US sparked a firestorm of unity and pride. Suddenly people who rarely agreed on politics or policy found common ground in defending what it meant to be Canadian. Trade disputes became personal overnight. Around dinner tables and in boardrooms, the conversation shifted from economics to respect, dignity, and the right to self-determination. Canadians felt bullied, their contributions to the world overlooked, and this sense of being wronged bridged political, linguistic, and regional divides like never before. The boycott of American goods became an act of defiance, a way for ordinary people to stand up for their country and defend a way of life they cherished. Even a simple trip to the grocery store was transformed into a patriotic statement as Canadians scrutinized labels and filled their carts with homegrown products. The US provocations intended to intimidate instead handed Canadians a unifying cause, one that transcended politics and brought people together in defense of their nation. The suggestion of statehood, meant to belittle, only strengthened Canadian resolve. It became a rallying cry, echoing through Parliament and the streets alike. In the face of external pressure, Canadians were more determined than ever to express their identity, through their voices, their actions, and even their wallets. The political firestorm quickly became a ground-level rebellion in Canadian grocery stores. Shoppers scrutinized labels seeking the Product of Canada mark. Polls showed 85% of Canadians actively replacing American products with domestic ones. Grocery aisles became a new public square where every purchase was a vote for the nation's economy. Canadian produce and dairy flew off shelves while American brands languished even at deep discounts. Shoppers adapted, learning to embrace local alternatives and seasonal availability. Recipes and stories celebrating Canadian ingredients spread online, deepening the connection between consumers and their food. Each choice, PI potatoes over Idaho, Quebec maple syrup over Vermont, became a national cause. Canadians proved they were not passive in global trade but active defenders of their interests and pride. The boycott's impact was swift and severe for the U.S. food industry. American farmers lost their largest export market overnight, orders were canceled, warehouses overflowed, and layoffs followed. The pain spread to tourism, as Canadians canceled U.S. vacations, leaving hotels and attractions empty. Billions in losses rippled through communities far from the border. The seamless flow of goods and people was suddenly disrupted, exposing American vulnerability to Canadian sentiment. The boycott forced a reckoning. The relationship could no longer be taken for granted. It was a stark lesson in the real-world consequences of political rhetoric and underestimating Canadian resolve. For Canada, the boycott brought both prosperity and new challenges. Domestic producers saw a 10% surge in sales, and local economies boomed as Canadians spent at home. The Discover Canada movement revitalized tourism, with national parks and cities bustling with visitors. But the sudden demand exposed supply chain weaknesses. Delays, shortages, and rising prices became common. The experience was a wake-up call. Self-sufficiency required more than willpower. It needed investment in infrastructure and logistics. The boom was real, but so was the burden on the system. Canadians learned that economic independence comes with complex trade-offs. As demand for Canadian products soared, a deceptive practice emerged: maple washing. U.S. goods were fraudulently labeled as Canadian with maple leaves and Product of Canada stickers slapped on American produce. Shoppers felt betrayed, their efforts to support local undermined by corporate greed. The Canadian Food Inspection Agency was flooded with complaints. Trust in major grocery chains eroded as consumers became self-appointed label inspectors. Some took action, marking over fake labels and sharing their findings online. Retailers issued apologies, but skepticism remained. Instead of weakening the boycott, the scandal strengthened it. Shoppers doubled down on supporting genuinely local producers and smaller vendors. The maple washing controversy turned label reading into a symbol of the fight for economic integrity. On the front lines, grocers, unions, and experts saw the movement's true scope. Grocers scrambled to meet demand for Canadian goods, shifting procurement strategies overnight. Labor unions championed the boycott as a fight for Canadian jobs and fair trade. Economic experts noted the boycott's global significance but also its limits. Patriotic purchasing alone couldn't change U.S. policy. The movement was a real-world experiment in economic nationalism. For grocers, it was a logistical challenge. For unions, a battle for workers. For experts, a case study in consumer power. Together, their perspectives revealed a nation in transition, united by a renewed commitment to community and respect. The boycott was more than a protest, it was a statement about what it means to be Canadian. The Great Canadian Pantry Purge was about more than just economics. It was a powerful lesson in sovereignty, self-determination, and mutual respect. It wasn't simply a matter of dollars and cents, but a moment when Canadians everywhere paused to consider what it truly means to stand together as a nation. The boycott made it clear that trade is built on partnership and mutual respect, not just transactions or profit margins. It sent a message that fair treatment and equality are the foundation of any lasting relationship between nations. Millions of unified choices, made by ordinary people, challenged powerful interests and proved the incredible strength of grassroots democracy. It was a reminder that real change often starts with the collective will of the people, not just with politicians or corporations. Canadians realized their power as consumers and their responsibility to defend national dignity. Every purchase became a statement, and every shopping trip, a small act of patriotism. The movement also exposed supply chain vulnerabilities and highlighted the urgent need for investment in domestic production. It forced a national conversation about food security and the importance of supporting local industries. In the process, it built stronger connections between urban consumers and rural producers, fostering a renewed appreciation for the people who grow and make our food. The boycott didn't sever ties with the US but recalibrated the relationship, reminding both sides that respect and fairness must always be at the heart of cross-border cooperation. Partnership could no longer be taken for granted, respect became non-negotiable, and the value of standing up for one's principles was reaffirmed. The pantry purge will be remembered as a dignified assertion of identity, a quiet revolution that spoke volumes about the Canadian spirit and the power of unity. Sometimes the most profound statements are made one grocery cart at a time, proving that everyday actions can shape the destiny of a nation.